I mean, I know for a lot of the numbers people, that doesn't make any sense, but there's so many people out here that intuitively know that real estate is a wealth building tool. And when you get your tax return, you look at your taxes, you look at your property, if you have a good tax person, you go, wow, maybe I didn't make a ton of money on this, but it sure did drop my tax burden. Or maybe I made a ton of money on this and it dropped my tax burden.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. That's me, Yona Weiss, your host. As always, we're the skipper on this ship that we call a podcast. And today we got a wonderful guest, Alex Olson, all the way from Kansas City. How are you today, Alex?
I'm doing great, man. It's a beautiful, warm, sunny day here, or at least warmer than it has been, so no complaints.
Amazing. I'm very appreciative of you taking the time out of your busy day to join us here. You're busy all day long in real estate transactions, and a lot of people have listened to this podcast. We got a lot of syndicators, a lot of multifamily investors, and other types of guests. And you're coming from a little bit of a different angle. Obviously, you invest in properties as well, but your main business is really just helping. And it's something that you started recently, which I'd love to get into, this new company that you started of helping 1031 exchange buyers find the right properties in the right time. Right? It's so stressful. How do you do it? How do you deal with it? Tell me a little bit about how you started this company and where the background.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, many people in the industry, in the syndication industry, know Logan Freeman. He's also located here in Kansas City. And he and I used to do a bunch of transactions together when we were at a different brokerage company. And that's actually how we met. Was he and I both, he more so than me, saw a vision for helping buyers find properties. And then lobbing on top of that, the 1031 exchange, time crunch that many people are under. And so how do we help people in that time crunch get into cash flowing properties? And there's, tons of people out there across the US. Maybe not everybody's looking at Kansas City, but we have access to deals that are mostly in the Kansas City market, the Kansas, Missouri market. But that's how we were like, there's so many different, we go on and on about all the stories of people that maybe didn't make the identification period in the 1031, or maybe they bought something that they shouldn't have. And there's no reason for that to happen if you're working with, great people to help you find these properties.
Yeah. I mean, I hear all the time, and it comes across, my inbox and, my feed, all kinds of things. People are just looking for properties, scrambling, send me as many properties as possible. Like people just trying to find anything and everything. I mean, what makes, obviously you're local to Kansas City and you obviously have the bias of liking the place where you live, but tell for our listeners and for myself, what makes Kansas City so great in terms of the real estate market?
That is a great question. One of the things, just taking a little bit of a step back is, and yes, you're 100% true. You're always looking in your backyard, right? Yeah. That's your first question is, what's my backyard real estate market? And can I make it work for quote unquote me? And there's, so many people that are priced out of maybe their home market, whether it's LA or San Francisco or New York, where Denver, or, places in Texas, wherever that may be. And so they look to other markets that might have better cash flow for them. And there's several things that make Kansas City a great market. One of which is the landlord-friendly rental laws, right? We don't have rent control. That's number one. We also have low taxes, which I know isn't a landlord law, but that's another aspect of investment. And then you also have, cash flow. And so when you look at all those aspects of it, it's kind of goes back to the good old days of a free open market society. Now we definitely have, different aspects of, you got to have, rental applications and somebody, be licensed and some of these other things for sure. So it's not like the wild, wild west, but it is a structured place to find and buy real estate with pretty minimal interruptions. And so that's why Kansas City happens to be a pretty good market, from just a fully stabilized cap rate perspective. We're looking at, CoStar data shows somewhere around 5.8, 5.9% for a Class C property. And, a place like Denver, which I'm actually doing some research on right now, might be a 5.25, so that's only a half point difference. But then you also have to look at all the other factors I just mentioned, right? Because cap rates just takes into account the unlevered situation you're in. But there's a lot more to it than just the cap rate. So that's one of the reasons why I really like Kansas City.
Absolutely. And like you said, you always got to look in your backyard. That's where you're going to find the best properties, and being boots on the ground, being local. And if anyone knows who you are, they've seen your videos, seen you going out to the properties, showing the different aspects of the city. And I love that, because it really gives people an insight into a market that, that they may not have known about. And that's something that it's tremendous, because everyone's looking, especially when you're doing a 1031 exchange. There's such a pressure, such a time pressure. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how you deal with that. I mean, you're dealing with probably more stressful clients than the average broker, and you've chosen that for yourself.
Yeah. For some reason. No, I think and that's why we chose that, and why I went into it is not because I've done a 1031 exchange, but because I know the stress of trying to buy properties just in general, and waiting around for people to get back to you and people to provide feedback to you. And even when and I still do buy, but when I was first started out, I wasn't an agent. I was just an investor. Man, there were great people I was working with, but I'm like, there's got to be a better way to provide quicker, better, faster, more intuitive feedback to people. And so, the stress of that is, when you close on your property, right, you have 45 days to identify up to 3 other properties. And so when you look at that, you're like, holy cow, where do I go? What do I do? Here's what I want. Everybody starts off with what I want. I want an 8% cap rate, all the kind of pie in the sky things. And so we really try to coach people to look at what the market is providing, right? It's not about what you want necessarily. It's about what's available, because we've had people wait up to the last second. Literally, they're texting their qualified intermediary midnight on their identification deadline and saying, hey, here's my new properties I want to identify. So there are certain things that we can put in front of them to do that will help alleviate some of that stress. And one of those things is what I just talked about. You can actually identify with your QI at any point in time. So let's say you find 3 properties within the first day or week. Even if you don't really necessarily 100% love them, you can still get them to your QI. That way, if you get hit by a bus or you get sick or you get whatever, you're still protecting your tax dollars you'd be paying is at least somehow protected. And I think that is just an important, easy thing you can do to start off.
100%. And what are some of the other things? Obviously you're coaching people, you're trying to help people, but to me, it seems like you said, a lot of people are going through a 1031 exchange. The reason why they're doing it is obviously they don't want to pay the capital gains tax, but it seems like they're oftentimes being unrealistic with the expectations of what they're trying to get out of it. I don't think everyone that's selling a property is selling a property at an 8 cap and they're simultaneously looking for the exchange, the upleg property to be just that. So why do you think that is? Like, what's the psychology behind that?
Well, it's the psychology behind it is complicated, because psychology is complicated, because people are complicated. But I think people look at what they did. Let's say they bought it 4 years ago, 2, 3, 5 years ago, in that range, right? And now they're looking to sell. Well, they bought stuff at an 8 cap 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, even though they've heard the news that, hey, cap rates are compressed and, everything's tight, right? And high demand, and it's a seller's market. And that's why they sold, right? And so I think that even though they know that, it's helping them know that for themselves. You can't tell them that necessarily, like directly say, hey, look, you will never find an 8 cap. So how we really approach that is to say, hey, look, here's the data. Here are past properties, recent properties that we've sold for other 1031 exchange clients to help them buy. And here's the projected cap rate for the market that you're looking at. And here's where we think that you should buy and why that's a good idea. don't just look at cap rate. Everybody wants to start there because it's easy, right? It's very easy. NOI divided by purchase price or whatever it is, right? So that's an easy way to look at it. But there's so much more than that. Let's say one of the things we always look at is how to creatively look at different deals. It might not be perfect, but let's look at it in how much cash flow you're going to get, how much cash you're actually going to put in your pocket every single month over the next 5 years. And maybe that's not your favorite metric to look at. So let's look at putting more money down. Let's put more money into this instead of going out and let's say you got $1 million in equity. Instead of going out and trying to find something that's $4 million purchase price, let's see what it looks like at a $2 million purchase price. Assuming that works within your exchange guidelines. And then you look at your cash flow and maybe that works for you. So, and then you also look at it and say, hey, look, this isn't going to cash flow perfectly, but it's right next to a brand new, $400 million economic development package here with a streetcar going in and all these other factors. The appreciation you're going to get over the next 2 years is going to be, twice what the average market is. So all these different things really come in and we bring this in at different points in the conversation. We bring it at the beginning, middle, and end to really help them make the decision. We're not making the decision for them. We're not the investor here. What we're trying to do is help them make their own decision. And you talked about it a little bit, it's psychology, right? But so it's almost like you're also a therapist for them to help them understand, hey, look, we're here with you. Nobody else, I'm exaggerating, but nobody else is on your side other than us because we're the only ones here trying to help you find a replacement property.
100%.
And then to add even more to that, we also have the ability to provide for boots on the ground services, right? We're not making any money off of providing them property management or helping them identify a good property manager, helping them identify great insurance brokers, local lenders. This likely probably won't be a great Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan, but we have a great bridge loan lender here that can get it for you, help you stabilize a property with financing. And then you can go out and do your long-term debt on this.
Great.
So all those different pieces we think help give comfort to anybody coming into the Kansas City market, even anybody that's even in the Kansas City market.
Sure. It makes a lot of sense because coming into any new market, it takes a long time to kind of build up the network, build up the resources, build up the team, boots on the ground. It seems like you guys provide a lot of those kind of bridges to all these different aspects of it. Just makes the whole process a lot more seamless. Now, are you focusing mostly on multifamily because that's something you've done obviously for many years, and I know Logan has long focused on that, or are you have other properties also?
Yeah, so our main focus, of course, is multifamily. Why? Because that's what everybody wants, and everybody knows it does well in the market. But we also do a lot of work on the triple net retail side or triple net medical office, anything that's pretty simple for an investor to understand quickly, right? Because you have 45 days. Plus, you also have to understand how to get it closed out in 6 months. And so something that's pretty, I either say near turnkey or some value add, maybe even 100% turnkey. And we've helped a lot of different clients get into neighborhood retail shopping centers that are recession resistant. What that means is they're pretty well stabilized. Here in the Midwest, we've got a lot of Dollar Generals that have long-term leases, or an Ace Hardware, or even a dental dental office, or something that has veterinary clinic, those kind of things, where you can't go out and get your dental implants on Amazon yet, right? Or get your pet vaccinated on Amazon yet. So those are the things we like to put people in because it's pretty recession resistant, and you can go out and likely sell it if you needed to down the road.
Yeah, I think it's an important factor, especially people who are doing 1031 exchanges are not necessarily looking to hold something long-term. A lot of people, their strategy is to kind of build that equity, have the property appreciate for a year, 2, 3, and then do the same thing, kind of rinse and repeat. I think most people who are doing the 1031 exchange are, and obviously there are exceptions, but are people that are more transactional than others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we look for too, is helping people understand that, even if you bring up a great point, if you're a transaction buyer, some people are or are not, but even if you buy something in Kansas City that isn't the perfect property for you, you can then sell that in a year and 1031 exchange into something else. So you're not bound to that property forever. It's not going to be, a perfect property forever. So there's a lot of different ways you can do it. So rather than go out and just say, I can't find anything, I'm going to pay taxes on it, especially if you have a high gains tax on that, buy something that we maybe suggest to you that is going to fit most your boxes. And if you don't like it, sell it in a year or 2 or 3 or 5, whatever fits your style, and find something else. And oh, by the way, make sure you come to us before you're going to do that, because we can help set up even the contract for you, on your down leg when you're selling that property, and maybe give you some extensions in there, maybe, help you identify something maybe that's going to be off market, to ensure that you get an even better property the next time around.
I'm curious to know, obviously you've been in this business for quite a few years. You've seen a lot. You've seen a lot of transactions. You've seen a lot of buyers, a lot of stories. Any real great stories or something, or really horror stories, anything just come to mind, jump out? Because we love stories on this podcast.
Yeah. So one story we have, it's one of my favorite success stories. And we had a client that actually never had ever invested in real estate. And it's like, well, how is that possible if they're doing a 1031 exchange? Well, they had bought their first house as their primary residence, right? And then, after 2, 3, 5 years, they decided that they were going to move out of that house. So they bought another house. And so then they rented out their first house. And then they owned that for 2, 3, 5 years. So they have this house that was their primary residence, but now is a rental that they've had for 5, 10 years. They can't do, your personal exchange out of that, so to speak. So their only option was to 1031 exchange. And oh, by the way, it was worth $1 million. And oh, by the way, it was 100% paid off. So they sold it, and they're like, well, shoot, now we sold this thing. We know we want to do a 1031 exchange. They gave it to a qualified intermediary, so they never touched the funds. They like the Kansas City market. And now they're like, what do I do with this $1 million? They come in wanting, the really high returns. And thankfully they came to us before their down leg closed, and we had a little bit extra time, but they had, to be frank, no idea really what real estate investing was like. So we really helped them understand property management. We helped them understand every single aspect of real estate investment, got them in contact with attorneys to set up LLCs, all these different things. And then at the end of the day, it was really shaky. Like, what are they actually going to close on? And they'd never really even seen an inspection report. Like, what does this look like? And so just helping them at every single aspect of it, it was very stressful for me too, because, I'm really worried about them as a client. Like, are you really sure you want to invest in real estate at first? But they were very gung ho about it. They knew the long-term wealth gains they could do. They knew about in general, the tax benefits they could have. So once we got over that point, it was a lot of fun helping teach and coach them on all the different aspects of real estate. Oh, by the way, also while training them up in the Kansas City market of what the heck Kansas City even is. And it was like a last minute thing of, hey, look, here's your only option that really fits your need. And they said, oh, no, we love this option. They closed out on it. And, here they are a couple of years later looking to buy more property. So that was one of my favorite success stories of taking somebody who'd never invested in real estate in a 1031 exchanging and getting them into a $4 million property.
Wow.
So that was fun.
That's amazing. And so in the end of the day, it was they ended up finding something, multifamily.
Yep. We got them into, identified a property it was actually an on-market deal, because it was what I would classify an overlooked on-market deal, because it was only on the MLS at a $4 million purchase price. Is not really a great fit for something here in Kansas City. Usually that's property that would have a much better response on LoopNet or some of the more commercial platforms.
Gotcha.
So we were able to take advantage of that aspect and get them into that property. And yeah, it was a multifamily, suburban style, 32 units. So you're looking at 8 fourplexes, all with garages, sprawling out in a suburban location. So, and they were very happy with it, and they're looking for more.
That's actually a really good tip in terms of what you said about the MLS and the overlooked properties, because oftentimes, if you're looking, I'm just thinking for myself and for any other real estate investor out there, you're looking at all these websites, you're looking at all the brokers, commercial brokers, sometimes a multifamily or, like you said, they're 8 fourplexes. So people might just consider that to be like a residential property and maybe not necessarily listed in a commercial website, but you can actually find some really good deals if you just look for kind of the higher price point, which is not getting looked at as often on these type of properties. So that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's absolutely. And we found several other deals too, through, it's like one every 2 or 3 months, be something like, well, that's funny that's on it's not funny that's on the MLS, but it's on the MLS, but it's not on CoStar or LoopNet or whatever else. Right. And, you start taking a secondary look at it and maybe even and a lot of times those on MLS, they don't have a really good pro forma, and it's just, poorly marketed. It's marketed for the residential home buyer because that's just the agency who it's with. And so, yeah, you can definitely take advantage of those. Even stuff that's been sitting on the market for a while too is another opportunity, because the seller's probably not motivated, but you come into it and you say, hey, look, I know this has been on the market, and you craft a narrative around that, and I can help you get this sold. And just kind of, it's worth a shot. It doesn't take a ton of time. So yeah, it's a good opportunity for someone.
That's great. What do you love most about the brokerage side of things? I mean, obviously, let's talk a second before that about real estate investing in general, because that's, you said, something you were doing before you got started in the brokerage side of things. But tell me about, what are the two things that you love the most
about the brokerage side?
About investing and real estate investing, and about the brokerage as well.
Yeah. So the things I love the most about it is, well, first of all, I love doing deals, and it's the satisfaction of finding something either for myself that I know is going to build wealth, or finding something for somebody else that I know is going to build wealth. Because I'm like, man, that is such a cool property. We don't spend a ton of time. I don't spend any time really on the D properties or even the C minus properties. So usually we're working with stuff that's pretty, at least somewhat interesting, where you can see the vision. I'm also a really visual person. I love even the boring stuff. You look at it and you go, okay, I can see how this could be cool. You could do this, you could do that. You could, add a unit in the basement. You could, paint the exterior, even though the buyer maybe not care a lot about it. That's some of the things I like to see. And then also coming back around, seeing how far it's come, a year later. And that's kind of on the surface stuff. But I also really love how it can build wealth with almost out you even knowing it. I mean, I know for a lot of the numbers people, that doesn't make any sense, but there's so many people out here that intuitively know that real estate is a wealth building tool. And when you get your tax return, you look at your taxes, you look at your property, if you have a good tax person, you go, wow, maybe I didn't make a ton of money on this, but it sure did drop my tax burden. Or maybe I made a ton of money on this and it dropped my tax burden.
Right,
so
exactly.
Some of those are the things that I really love about real estate.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Well, Alex, I want to jump into what we call the final four here. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. First question for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
Well, I grew up on a Midwestern farm with a hog farmer. And so there are a lot of really, really bad jobs that I've had, and almost like, I wouldn't say embarrassed to say that I've had, but castrating hogs is the worst job I've ever had. And, it didn't pay very well, but I learned a lot. I learned how I didn't want to be a doctor. I'll say that.
I don't know. I don't even want to try to think about like what you could have learned from that job, but
well, you learn that you don't want to be a doctor.
Right. You learn what not to do, or what you don't like. Yeah. I hear that. Okay. Well, then there you go. I don't think we've ever had someone mention anything remotely close to that. So great. I appreciate that. That's always good to hear new things. Speaking of new things, what's a book that you've read that's given you a paradigm shift? Sam
Zell's book, Am I Being Too Subtle? I read that W-2 job when I was at my W-2 job before I was a real estate investor. I, knew I wanted to be a real estate investor, but you read his story and there's so many things in there that gave me the idea of taking the leap, so to speak, because he talks about when he was in college, finding ways to buy things. He didn't look for ways to not buy things. But he found ways to buy real estate. And I think in any market, you look back at all the different people They're, you talk to normal people on the street that are even investors, like, oh, it's too expensive now. It's too this, it's too that. But what he did, people were saying the same thing back then. He said, well, how can I still find a way to buy this? And he found a way, and look where he is now. So I think that was like, this guy knows what he's doing and knew what he was doing then. So that really shifted my mind.
No, that's huge. Definitely learning from successful people, and especially someone like him who has had tremendous success in business. It does. And just the mechanics behind it, like you're saying, how he did it and what he was doing, even from such a young age, just incredible. So I appreciate that. I don't think anyone's ever mentioned that book on the show before, come to think of it. So I appreciate you bringing up a new one. We'll put it in the show notes for anyone who wants to check that out. And third question, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
So what I learned, this has nothing to do with real estate, but I would love to learn how to become a movie script writer. I think that there's probably, it seems like everybody, I say everybody, but there's a lot of people that can do it. I'm not a writer. I'm not a very good writer. I, write in bullet points most of the time. But what does it take to actually write a movie script? I'm a huge movie nerd. That's how I made my first, side hustle gig, was with, doing some things around movies. And so I've seen over 1,500 movies that I've read, reviewed, and rated. And I would just love to be able to write my own movie script. I don't even know what it would be about, but that's what I would love to know how to do.
There you go. That's quite a goal. That's something to aspire to. Good for you. Yeah. That sounds interesting. Yeah, that's awesome. I wish you luck and success with that. That sounds like it could be a big challenge.
Thank you.
Especially if you don't even know where to begin. That's if it all starts with the idea, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have the idea, you figure out ways to get to it.
I think, not to bore you with the details, but the long-term goal would be able to create my own movie, right? You do all of it, the whole production,
right?
Shooting it, editing it, videoing it, whatever, writing the script, all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't even have to be a very great script, but I want it to be a full feature-length movie that looks professional and doesn't cost a lot to make. And, that's a bucket list item for me. We'll see if I ever get there.
Well, there you go. We'll check back with you one of these days.
There you go.
And fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
Actually, it's funny. You talked a little bit about this, and I've thought about this a lot in the past. You see all these people with, they've got their private jets, they've got their thises, their that's, they've got their fancy cars, and all that is a certain level of success. But my success really just is independence from, basically having the ability to take risk. And what I mean by that is, is my family safe and secure? I've got some young kids. Is their future look pretty safe and secure? Is my home safe and secure? Meaning, am I in a good financial position that will not cause any burdens? If I take a risk and make a mistake, is my wife safe and secure? How is my life? If my life is safe and secure from most risk, then I can go out and take extra risks and do more fun things and, spend a bunch of money, because I know that at the end of the day, I'm not putting a lot of people at a lot of risk.
Right.
And I think from a very basic level, that's what I would classify as success.
Love that. It's a great answer. One that we haven't heard that exact point, and we always get a little bit different angle to it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's not always about money. Real estate helps you, build wealth, and people sometimes get confused about wealth versus riches versus get rich quick. And I used to strive for, I wouldn't say get rich quick, but like, how can, I kept looking for things. How can I get out of my day job? How can I get out of my W-2 job? And real estate, at some aspect, I thought would help me get there really fast. Well, it turns out it takes a really long time and a lot of work,
right,
and a lot of risk. And once you reach that point, or at least once I reached that point, it was, I've got my dream house, I've got my, this and that. How can I continue to reduce the risk to my family and just live a great life? And real estate definitely helps me get there. And, I look forward to continuing the journey.
Well, good for you. And I wish you much continued success with that, everything that you're doing. It's an inspiration, and it's great to know that resources like you are out there and exist for people who have this very specific need, and just helping people create that wealth. So kudos to you.
Thank you, man.
And I appreciate that. And appreciate you taking the time. And where can our listeners, by the way, find you or reach out to you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, exchange.cre.com, exchange.cre.com. You can see kind of behind me, whichever way that is. Starts with an X, not an EX.
We'll put it in the show notes also. We'll make sure it's in down there.
Yeah, so that's my favorite place. Of course, LinkedIn, which is practically how you and I met. But, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I'm trying to provide as much value as I can on there, talking real estate and life in general, man.
100%. Awesome. And thank you again for joining us, taking the time today. And thanks to our listeners for tuning in once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.